What's up, guys? Riley and Dalton here with True North Sports. It's been a while, but we're back with a new video here today to talk about a pretty big trade that happened. Dalton, initial thoughts?
Cat, 9 years, former number one overall pick, has a lot of records. Arguably the best shooting big of all time. But when it comes down to it, he just wasn't putting up the postseason's numbers. And when you're getting paid to be an option one and you got another superstar in town, you got to keep the options open. And when you just paid Nas, you paid Jaden. To be honest with you, we got a pretty good package back. You want to talk about the package?
Yeah, I mean, Julius Randle, he is what he is, right? I don't know how much more of an emotional player or of emotionally controlled player he is compared to Cat. They both have their issues on the court with controlling it. But I think that was a big issue with Cat. Obviously, he couldn't let things go, always had to, go at the refs, and things would just boil over for him. He'd pick up those dumb ticky-tack fouls, and you couldn't just rely on him, because you'd need him out there, and he'd take himself out of the ball game. And my dad, he's not a huge Wolves fan, but he'll tune into a game here and there. And that's one of the biggest things that glares to him. And that's kind of, when a casual viewer, when that's the first thing they notice, that's an issue. And so I think Tim Connolly kind of realized that could be an issue later on down the road. The biggest thing, though, this trade happened for the money, right? You just couldn't keep the young core together without letting something go. I'm not going to get into the details of how the cap works because, for one, I don't think anybody truly understands it except the people who are actually, within that line of work. But long story short, you just couldn't keep it together. You had to let somebody go. Cat's on a supermax deal. So Julius, he's on a contract year. You let him walk or you could re-sign him, whatever. But this helps alleviate some of that. And, you're buying into some of your young guys. But let's talk about Dante DiVincenzo before we get into Julius Randle, because that was the piece that I think made this deal happen. Julius was always going to be there to make the money match from, matching a standpoint for the trade. But once DiVincenzo came available, I think that's when the Wolves decided to pull the trigger. I don't know if Tim said he needs to be in the deal and if he just hardballed New York, but what are your thoughts on him before I list some stats for you?
Yeah, I mean, just go look at it. 40% from deep. He's going to be a big, big option coming off the bench. But the biggest part is he's got 3 years left on his deal. 11 to 12 to 13 million in today's league is so valuable. And
one of the best contracts in the NBA.
Yeah, I really don't think the Knicks wanted to let him go. But Minnesota was kind of had him by the nuts. I mean, you lose a really decent big, and they were looking to replace him with Cat, and he was the best option, I think, available out there. And it was great for Minnesota to get, I think, top value. Because what if next year you don't get back to the Western Conference Finals and Cat has another bad postseason appearance? I think we're going to be looking back and we're going to be saying, hey, to get a piece like Dante on top of Julius Randle and a first-round pick for Cat with that contract, I'm really pumped. But yeah, when I saw his name, I was really excited about him. So give us some stats.
Yeah, so Dante last year, 15.5, 3.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists. But his last 48 games, he averaged over 20 points a game. In that Indiana playoff series, now I know Brunson was banged up, so he was, DiVincenzo was getting a little more of a run time and a little more looks. But 22.7, 4.6, 2.6 on 46% from three. And he had 2+ games, or over 2 games exactly, with 35 points, I think, and 39 points in one. So he was just balling out in that series, can absolutely light it up from three. So he's going to replace Cat's shooting in that aspect. And I'm very curious to see the Julius Randle fit, so we can talk about him some, because he is technically the biggest piece coming back for the Wolves here. I know you cut a 2-time All-NBA guy, 3-time All-Star. He's killed it for the Knicks the last 4 years, pretty much from COVID on. He's really found his own. Last year he averaged 24, 9, and 5. So he can pass it too. He's not just a scorer and rebounder. But the big issue, 31% from deep last year, and he's shooting 5 a game. So I don't know how you play him and Rudy together. Thoughts on that pairing and what Finch is going to have to do there?
Yeah, once again, contract reasons. I think he's got a player option after
He
this
does,
year.
yeah.
At this point, I think he's almost underrated. His contract is actually pretty nice when you look at Cats for down the road. And I think that was the biggest part. When you add Dante next to Randall, you still can compete, in my opinion, in the Western Conference Finals. I don't think you maybe have as high as a ceiling, but let's ask some New York Knicks fans what they think about getting Cat. I don't know if they're over the moon thinking that, hey, we're going to beat Boston and get kind of the same type of level as Kristaps is. Oh, I mean, you look at Cat against Kristaps, he had like 7 points, he got shut down. So I'm just asking Knicks fans, are you guys happy? I know you maybe didn't give up a guy like Julius Randle, who you probably had a lot of ups and downs with them, and he's maybe gonna hang on to the ball, has a different play style than Cat, more as a catch and shoot guy like we watched him do time and time again. But Julius Randle, I think it was a contract, and if he balls out, fantastic. But if he doesn't, Nas can just take his minutes.
Yeah, I think Cat, it's going to be a very fine line for them. It could be troubling playing in New York. That was his hometown team growing up. He's from New Jersey, loved the Knicks growing up. But their fans can be brutal. If he goes out there and puts up a few stinkers, they're not going to be kind to him. And we know how much stuff can get into his head, how much that plays into how well he plays, right? Like that stuff affects the things he does on the court. If he's getting booed or jeered at by his own fans, we don't know what we could see out there. But I really do think this is going to be a great fit for Cat. The last 2 years after kind of taking a backseat to Ant, he's been around that 20-21 point per game average. I think in New York here, even with Brunson there, I think it's going to tick back up to that 24 range. I like the pick and pop that they're going to have going on with Brunson, because for as good as Ant is, he's just not the passer that Brunson probably ever will be. And Brunson is more of a scoring guard, but he will, willing passer. So I love the pick and pop they got going there. But very curious to see how it works out there. Big shakeup, obviously, for both teams. I'll go back to the spacing with Julius and Rudy, because I think that's a really big thing. I think we're going to see a lot of Nas and Rudy pairings, or Nas and Julius. I don't know how much Finch is going to trust going to those two, because I think you could just absolutely load up on Ant and say, we don't care. You could have, two other shooters out there besides those two, but I just don't see that working out very well. But we'll see. Finch can make stuff work. The rotation we should talk about. I kind of went through this right before we decided to record here. I kind of have the layout. Starting lineup, I think, will be the same, except Julius for Cat. Do you think anything will be different there?
I mean, ideally, I wouldn't mind Nas starting, but coming off the bench with Dante, and of course, Rob is going to be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, Julius is starting.
Yeah, if it was me, I would start Nas. But I just think from a money standpoint, and we're talking about a guy, like we said, two-time All-NBA selection. He averaged 24 points a game last year. He'll probably start. But what I kind of wrote down here for their top 10 was, like we mentioned, same starting lineup, just Julius for Cat, and then Nas, Rob, and this is no particular order for like ranking, but their top 10 rotation: Nas, Rob, Dante, and I think Joe Ingles will be in the last spot of the rotation to start off with. And then three guys who could find their way in the rotation or find minutes: Josh Minot, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Luka Garza.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just really excited about Dante, man. I remember back in the 2018 draft, we had the 20th pick, and we took, of course, the one and only Josh Okogie. And Dante didn't fall. He went, I think, 17-18 at that time. And
we both really wanted him. I remember like watching him light it up in that March Madness before.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy next to Anthony Edwards is going to come up with a lot of clutch minutes. And Mike's not getting any younger. So to really have Rob and Dante, and then you get Ingles stretching the floor for Ant, that's when maybe the T-Wolves fall behind. You sit down Julius because he's 2 for 10. They're like, hey, let's just get some shooting around Anthony Edwards and let him cook. So I'm just really excited about Dante, though, man. We've been talking about him for a long time, and he's been balling out. And it's going to be sick to see him in a Timberwolves uniform.
Yeah, and to go back to Cat a little bit, I think they made this deal in mind, and we decided in this video we're going to talk about media day as well. So I'll move on to that a little bit. A few things stood out to me that Finch mentioned. The first thing he said, McDaniel's summer, he said out of anybody like that he's had one of the best summers that he's seen. So big step forward for McDaniel's. Maybe we see that point per game tick up to like that 18 range. We both know he's capable of that. We've always said that he kind of plays like a Paul George, but we'd never see that scoring type. Well, we got a big hole, big shoes to fill. Cat's gone. Like somebody's got to take over that scoring role. I know Julius is coming to town, but McDaniels could have a huge summer and huge camp and really step up. And then he also mentioned Josh Minot has been one of the best players in the building the last 6 weeks. I don't know if he cracks the rotation right away, but I think Finch was comfortable with their forward depth behind, Julius and beyond, that they could make this deal move Cat and not have to worry about finding stable forward play.
Yeah, just talking through that rotation. Players are going to get banged up. Cat was banged up last year. Julius was banged up last year. So they have some depth. And in my opinion, get a 2-for-1 swap. Because, yes, does Cat have a higher ceiling? Yes. Is he a better all-around player than Julius? 100%. But I don't think there's that big of a difference. And when you add a guy like Dante, who can come in and compete right now, coming off of Western Conference Finals, I'm really excited. I think Tim Connolly cooked with this one. They looked down, and obviously with Glenn still being the owner, he's going to be tight. He saw Cat, what he was making, then obviously paying everybody else. Glenn wasn't going to do that.
That's a big bill to foot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And Tim just said, you know what? This is probably the best package we're going to get. And to be honest with you, I agree, because you really take a risk where if we don't make it back to the Western Conference Finals and Cat throws a bum performance in the postseason, you're not getting Jack Dilly swap for him because of that cap. So I'm super excited. I think Rob's going to be huge also in the scoring column to try and help replace Cat, because Naz and Jaden, hopefully they'll get a couple more buckets, but I think Rob can also add to that as well, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited for Rob. I was thinking that he was going to be a guy that might average, 8-9 points a game his rookie year after he was drafted, But now maybe he could get to that 11 plus. But we'll see. Like Julius is still going to take up a big chunk of scoring. Don't get me wrong. He fills a role that the Wolves really haven't had. He's a bruiser. He plays bully ball. He'll get you some of those tougher buckets that Rudy and Cat just really weren't going to get you. He's not afraid to get dirty in there, throw a bow here or there maybe. So I'm going to love seeing that, getting some more of those scrum buckets. But we could see Rob average who knows what, but I'm super excited for his rookie year. But to go to Ant's quote here from Media Day, I want to ask you this question. Do you think Tim asked Ant or told Ant about this before he pulled the trigger? Or do you think Ant found out like the rest of us?
I truthfully think when you have your 22-year-old superstar, could be face of the league, I think you're going to ask him. That's just me. I think you're going to ask for his opinion.
Have to, right?
Yeah, if he wanted to really, really, really keep Cat, I still think Cat would be in Minnesota. So, yeah, I think they did have a conversation.
Yeah, and maybe Tim just didn't care and said, you know what, like, we can't. Like, look at how much money is on the books here. Like somebody's got to go. It's going to have to be Cat sooner or later. His trade value is not getting any better. As he gets older here, his contract's only going to go up. He's almost 30, So I didn't mind moving him. It's tough because he's gave everything to Minnesota. He had no reason to stay, in like that 2019 season. They were just horrible that season. No reason to stay. He never requested out. Stayed true and true. But a quote from Ant here is, I think everyone knows Cat is my brother, so that really hurt. It's a business. That was a quote today. Very interesting, curious, but Tim Connolly knows what he's doing. He's got the track record to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think we can both agree on that. There's no reason not to trust him in this. I think he sees a future of having just, all these elite role players around Ant as like this hub. So it's not like heliocentric, like necessarily like the Harden Rockets were, but Ant is the hub, and then you just have all these elite ball players around him that all do their role, and it just makes this team that's very hard to beat.
I'm still shocked that Tom wanted to trade for Cat and give up.
Yeah, good point. We haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah, and I know Julius was maybe a little upset, it sounded like, and Dante wanted to get some minutes. And when you got Josh Hart and OG, let's be real, OG's probably most valuable at the 4 and pretty much plays the same position as Julius, and you're not going to play either of them at the 5. And then Josh Hart with Bridges are going to soak up almost all the crunch time. Yep. So you're not getting end-of-game situations for a guy who, like you just mentioned, back in Villanova, all he does is just have ice in his veins. So I think it worked out perfect for the Timber Pups to really take advantage of kind of the Knicks going all in, needing to win a title now, because if they do not win a title, a lot of their draft capital's gone, and they signed OG to a lot of money. Bridges, he's on a decent contract, but he's going to come due at some point. Cat's going to be getting paid. So they're going all in. And I think it's a bold strategy when you just look at Cat's postseason performances.
Yeah, he doesn't have the track record to back it up necessarily. Not all of that is his fault, but at the end of the day, you got to produce. You got to put up numbers. Ant has done nothing but do that. So you got to produce. And like you said, Tibbs, very surprised that he does go back to Cat. I know from a talent standpoint, you get better, like overall. When you look at your roster, that's a tough team to beat. You got a stretch 5 who can shoot from anywhere on the floor. You got Jalen Brunson, and then you have multiple wings who are elite 3-and-D guys, but they're not just a 3-and-D guy. Like they're more than that. Like they're borderline all-star players.
All of them.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like an off-brand Celtics, which sounds super disrespectful, but it's not, because they're going to be a team that's probably hosting somebody in the first round of the playoffs. I think they're a top 4 seed. Do you think they sneak in, or do you think they're kind of looking on the outside?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're probably right around there, because Joel and the Sixers, Maxey are going, hey, we got Paul George, man. Like, we're not really that scared of you getting Cat. And you look at Boston coming off the title. They got Kristaps with Tatum and Brown. I really don't think they're that concerned about Cat getting traded to New York. So I think you got to put him outside of those top 2. And then you get Milwaukee. Yeah, I'll say top 4. I'll give it to him.
Okay. Yeah. Regardless, they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be contenders in the East. We're both super excited for this season. Both the East and West are kind of wide open. I know the Celtics still kind of have a grapple on the East until proven otherwise. But there's just so many dangerous teams. There's so much talent in the entire NBA now. I think that's why so many people are pushing for expansion, because you look around the league, guys like Markelle Fultz aren't even on a roster anymore. Like, that's a decent ball player. But we'll end with this little conspiracy here. Kevin Durant, future Timberwolf. Was this a move, chess not checkers, by Tim?
I think it opens up a lot of opportunities, and I think that's why they did it. I don't think they're necessarily done. I know we're a couple days before training camp here, but this opens up doors. This trade does. You were kind of stuck running it back with Cat, and don't get me wrong, Rob was a nice selection. I like what they did. But to get Dante to come off the bench, and you get a guy like Julius, and if you need to move Julius to get a guy like Kevin Durant, I just don't think they're done yet, Ryan. Do you think they're done?
I think for the offseason they probably are. I don't think any more major moves are coming. At the deadline, maybe there's a major shakeup. But the trade package that I kind of pitched for a Kevin Durant deal would be Julius Randle, Rob Dillingham. I don't know if that money exactly matches. So whatever throw in you need to make that match, whether it be a sorry, we love you around here, but your $6 million does need to go if it means we get Kevin Durant. And then you give him that Detroit pick. It's got it's protected. I don't know if it'll convey this year. It's got like 3 convey years, and then it goes to a second round pick or something. But give him that Detroit first, and then whatever other draft capital you can, a couple seconds, and you say, hey, Phoenix, here's a chance to reset. You get a nice piece in Rob Dillingham. You can do whatever you want with Julius Randle. You get off the Kevin Durant money, and you can just reset and reevaluate.
Yeah, I'm just really excited, man. I think Julius can still provide some value, and I know he can hang on to the rock a lot, but there's going to be times when you need a guy like that to take a little pressure off of Ant. And Randall can still do that. That guy can still get buckets. Now his jumper might be a little broke, but if he can knock down the outside Jays, all NBA player. And I think you nailed it a couple times. All NBA type of guy. And it wasn't just a one-time deal. I mean, this guy's arguably had a better career than a guy like Sabonis.
Yeah.
We give him respect.
Similar resume.
Made it very far in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting. I still think the Wolves are a top 8 seed in the West. I saw one fella, and I don't remember who it was, say that's not the case. I really do think they're still a top 8 team in the West, right?
Yeah, I think it's almost disrespectful to say they're not. I know they had a big shakeup, but they just led almost the entire – I know they finished as a 3 seed, but they led the West for almost the entire season last year. I don't know if they're going to host a playoff series. Maybe they're like a 5 seed or something. But they're still going to be in the thick of the playoff race. I still think they're contenders. I think you have a guy like Anthony Edwards and anything can happen. I really do. And it's not like he's got a bunch of bums around him. He's got legit talent. And Julius Randle, he's a better ISO player than Cat is. Unfortunately, it comes at the expense of a little more sticky, where the ball's not going to be getting moved as much. And it's kind of hard to watch when a guy like Julius Randle is going to work if he doesn't get you a bucket, if he misses. That's a bad possession. But we'll end it. We'll end it with that. We got some more content here coming in the future. NBA season's right around the corner. NFL season's in the thick of it. So we're gonna have some fantasy content coming out for you. But any last thoughts here from you, Dalton?
No, Cat, one of the greatest. I know the list isn't
long,
but yeah, you were. But sometimes it's a business, like Ann said. And this really opens up a lot of doors. And I think Tim didn't want to take the risk of maybe not having the best season next year, having a down year. And now you can't make any moves around Ant.
You're stuck, yeah.
Stuck with the roster that you got. Now you have some flexibility. So I'm really excited because Ant's the guy. I know he said we were the one together or something like that as well in media day. Come on, Ant. You're just saying that. That's not the case. It hasn't been really the case in the last 18 months, I'd say. So yeah. I'm just excited coming off the Olympics. I think it's going to be a great year. I really do.